I sort of started going down this path of like, what's it going to take to get to the UFC?
Sure.
Do I want that?
What does it take to, if you're sitting in a room saying like, okay, there's something slightly different here. I'm sat here as a martial artist, not a fighter. And for anyone who's sat there being like, what's the difference? The fighter is the bloke in the pub that you don't want to look at. Martial artist is the guy who's just sat calm as anything next to them and doesn't even realize that they're there. I know martial artists. Like I used to run a pub, and there was a guy called Tony the Egg. He was known as, because he was bald. But high level, black belt in a few different disciplines. Anytime a fight would kick off, he would, and he was kind of the de facto bouncer there. He was the coolest person in the world. He never basically threw a punch. He'd just move people around and push them out the door. And it was like no stress. Whereas everyone else in a fight has got veins popping out of them and they're stressed out to the view. So I can imagine it must have been, you're sat there being like, nah, okay, they're like you say, they're pit bulls. Whereas I've spent my entire life, building this martial arts discipline, and the calm that you see come from there. Did you start to think, am I going to have to change myself?
That's exactly what happened. I looked at some of the other prolific people who were martial artists turned fighters. So there was like Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida, George St. Pierre. These are all guys who are martial artists who are capable of becoming a fighter and moving between. But I basically really struggled with that. And I actually went down I would say I went down the wrong path. I became more fighter than martial artist. I started thinking, okay, to be successful, I need to have the same fighter mentality these guys has, because clearly that's what gets you further. So it really, I'll be honest, it really kind of changed my character even. Like I started talking more smack. I didn't really do that before. And I put myself out of my depth, honestly. I just was saying things that weren't really part of my real character. I was basically I was creating a character. I was creating a persona to put bums on seats for my fights, to get me more visibility and exposure that would lead to me getting on bigger shows. And it did work. But at the cost of sort of losing myself along the way.
And when you're going to dedicate yourself to something, especially something that's so dangerous, but you're going to dedicate you something where it's not like you lose a round of golf and you're like, man, like you go home and you're broken from it as well. Like you at least want to go home, should you have a loss in the column or a win in the column, but go home and be like, well, I was me. I put everything I had out on the table, and that, the result was the result, but not sit being like, well, that wasn't me. And I put everything out on the table. Wow. Hard, really hard. So, but you were still fighting for while this kind of internal conflict was happening.
Yeah, basically. And obviously I was getting older. So like by this point I was in my, I think I just turned sort of 30-ish, and the younger kids, they were all like happy to kind of get involved in the kind of fight entertainment side and talk smack and stuff. But I kind of really felt uncomfortable doing that. And I didn't really feel like, and things I said, I regretted everything that I said in those kind of interviews. I was instantly like, unless I was able to be a martial artist and be myself and be humble, that seemed to not be interesting to people. It was like, the fight fans don't care. They don't care if I'm a martial artist. They just care if I'm this animal, or or if I've knocked someone out, or if I submitted them impressively.
Yeah.
They really don't care about anything else other than that. And unless you're such a phenomenal athlete that people are just interested in your sheer skill, arguably like Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida and GSP are more on the drier side of characters.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, they're not Chael Sonnen. Chael Sonnen is, you're tuning into for him. You're not tuning in. You don't care if he wins or loses. No,
what I mean? in fact, he lost a bunch of times, and I'd still be like, love that fight, love that fighter. Like, that didn't affect anything to do with it, because it was all about, when he was fighting, and certainly now, but it's all about just his persona and I guess that's very much fighter mentality as well, because he's willing to say things which are basically untrue for entertainment.
He's a true competitor. He's a very gifted and talented athlete. But he understood, he's more comfortable giving that kind of conflicting, almost jarring opinions to get notoriety, right?
Yeah.
And visibility in the sport. But over time that kind of eroded me, if I'm honest. And in my sort of second to last fight, it was a real train wreck. Like the fight was against a guy who was very arrogant. And again, I wouldn't say of the martial arts type, more of the fire type. We said a lot of crosswords, and I, again, always regret saying what I said to him. But, you know, the show is kind of this machine that I was on at the time, a big show in the UK. And yeah, it just put a lot of doubt into me. And at the time, actually, on top of all that kind of pressure of talking over games, selling tickets, training hard, you know, trying to
not to mention the training, right?
Yeah, not to mention the fact that you're training. I was training twice a day, 5 days a week, and maintaining a day job. There's a lot of pressure, you know, a hell of a lot of pressure. And I, in between all that as well, part of the requirements of that show was to have a brain scan, actually. And I had a brain scan that basically came back with some anomalies. Now, luckily, to this day, like, they didn't turn out to be anything severe or dangerous, right? They were what you call age spots. Basically, dead spots of the brain that happen as you get older, but they weren't helped by the fact that I was obviously taking repeated blows in training. Yeah, and that gave me there was that moment that I think really was the defining moment of whether I was going to fight or not ever again. And at that point, it was almost an immediate decision that I kind of felt like that was going to be my last fight, even at that moment, because it had removed my Superman syndrome. And as a fighter, you need to be flawlessly confident in yourself. And as soon as you think you've got a chink in your armor, you're going to lose. You're going to defeat yourself before you get in there.
Right.
And that's what happened. I got in there, and I didn't feel like I wanted to fight. I just felt like
this is something I have to do, not something I want to do.
Yeah, and I had kids by this point. I had 2 little boys. I had a whole world of responsibility on my shoulders, and it was like, wow, this doesn't actually mean that much to me anymore. Like, I'd already won the British Championship before that, so I'd done in my mind, what I'd set out to do when I started was win a British title. I'd done that. The rest that came afterwards was just additional things that I'd kind of romanticized in my head about.
And momentum.
Yeah.
And momentum. Like, you've got to that pinnacle. What do? Oh, stop and become a plumber. No, I'm going to carry on doing the next thing. What's the next thing? Next thing's UFC. Okay, well, now I'm finding that my personal style isn't sat with what the crowd are going to want. Now I've got to change that to do this, whereas that was never your goal. That was never who you wanted to be, which is why you're a martial artist, right?
Yeah, and I guess my inner martial artist was crying out and telling me off, and I didn't know it. But, you know, achievement is a son of a gun, right? You get some, you want some more. And so that led me down that path. But yeah, anyway, ultimately, I lost that fight. I didn't commit. It wasn't the fight it was billed to be. And I got a lot of flack, like, at the time, like, a lot of flack on social media and abuse in all different platforms for my performance.
Brilliant.
And well, at that point, I retired. On paper, I retired. I said, you know what? I'm done. But it was really a semi-retirement, because I did come back and have one more fight, which is the kind of sweetness of the story, as it were. But I didn't. I kind of walked away, and I was like, I'm done. All my coaches were like, "Wow, you sure you want to go out like that? Like, that you're not, all the good you've done, like, to go away like that feels like are you going to regret that?" And I was regretting it, because I was like,
it's a loss, right? You're not going to sit there going, yay,
Yeah, I just didn't know whether I wanted to put myself through it anymore. And the constant fear of, like, what if that scan was right? Like, what if I had shortened my life, damaged myself to the point where, one more hit might kill me? And it was like, okay, I need to really, like, weigh this all up. But about 6 months went by, and I was just training casually, I would say. I was not training the same volume or effort.
Not 2 a days and working on different things and working on pad work and stuff, training when you're training and training what you're training when you're training it, because you've been doing it for so long, but not like in a camp type thing.
Yeah, no, it was just, turning up to class once or twice a week kind of thing, like real casual, like, I'd completely lost my way. I was lazy, right?
I like how you're lazy is when I'm killing it fitness wise. Like, I dig that.
Well, it's about the expectations we place on ourselves is what matters, right? Yeah, my expectations of myself were high. I was known in MMA at the time for being a fitness machine. I couldn't be tight. So for me, that level was like not the level I expected myself. So I considered myself lazy. It doesn't mean others. But yeah, I got a call from my manager at the time, and he was like, "Oh, like, I think I can get you you know, how are you feeling about this? Would you give it another shot? And I was like, I'm not sure. It has to be the right opportunity. I was kind of in two minds about it, but I got a chance to go up against a former world champion. And I said, you know what? Like, either way, this will be my last one. And if I get a chance to go one more time as me,
nice.
I'm not going to worry about putting bums on seats. I'm not going to care about the show. I almost closed them all out. Like, I think they booked me expecting me to do the same thing. And they were like, where's all the smack talk? Where's all the stuff that we're expecting you to do? And I didn't care about it. I was like, nice. I'm here to perform as the best me. And I actually lost I think I lost a split decision or a unanimous decision in that fight. But
it was at least, you know, you put everything on the table then, and like, you know, even the judges saw it happen as well, right?
Well, and it was still a close fight. Like, even though I lost the unanimous decision, you know, 3 rounds to the other guy, I lost because he played the game well, which I completely respected. He scored I think a takedown more than me in every round, but I gave him a lot more punishment, and I came out feeling like, well, I did what I do, and I did what I was here to do, which was clear my demons and go out on my sword, as it were. And then effectively walked away from the industry at that point and was like, okay, I'm done. Yeah, what do I do now, though? And then that was obviously the transition to the next part of my life.
Incredible. So incredible.